kay Koy.
Mana go. Mute na go.
Ano ba? Joy.
Go.
Saan? Joy kita.
Mute. Magsugod na.
Gibon.
Sige. What? 1, 2, 3, go. Muscular dystrophy. Muscular dystrophy refers to a group of inherited muscle disorder in which skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle tissue degenerates, and the person experiences progressive weaknesses and other symptoms, including heart problems. Ang muscle dystrophy kay kuan, siya kay mga muscle disorders niya kuan mo degenerates atong mga tissues and maka-experience ta og weaknesses o mga symptoms o heart problems. Next. Myasthenia gravis. Myasthenia gravis was described in a case in point on P163. It is a chronic progressive autoimmune disease resulting from a destruction of acetylcholine receptors in the neuromuscular junction. Treatment includes anti-synchronous drugs and or immune suppressive drugs. Ang kani siya kay kuan mga autoimmune disease niya ang treatment niya includes kaning anti-cholinergic drugs o kaning immune suppressive drugs. Na press example aning kaning nas picture sa upper kay iyang isa ka mata kay brag down niya, ang isa kay normal. Ang kani sa lower na picture kay brag nikidhat like mabor kay sanan and usa kay brag normal ra. Brag nigiyang yang mata or eyebrow. Next. Tendinitis. The name implies tendinitis is an inflammation of a tendon or its attachment point. It is usually occurs in athletes who overtax the muscle to which the tendon is attached. Ang kani siya na ang tendinitis kay siya kanang common siya sa mga athletes kay ang athletes kay karami nila malihok ilang joints, ilang muscles and kay kani siya kay common kani nila and kuan nila kanang dali nila makuha ang kanina ang tendinitis. Next. This comparison of muscle types. We have 3 types: skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, smooth muscle. First, we have skeletal muscle. Location, attached to the bone, appearance niya, kanang nasa picture. Cell shape, long cylindrical, nucleus, multiple perifical. Yung special features, none. Striations, kay yes. Autorhythmic, no. Control, kay voluntary. Function, move the whole body. Now we have the cardiac muscle. Location niya kay sa heart. Appearance, makita ra sa picture. Cell shape, branched. Nucleus, usually single or central. Special features, intercentral discs. Stations kay yes. Autorhythmic kay yes. Control kay involuntary. Function kay contract heart to propel blood through the body. Last, we have smooth muscle. Location niya kay walls or hollow organs blood vessels, and glands. Yung appearance kay nara makita sa picture, cell shape, spindle shape, nucleus, single or central, special features, cell-to-cell attachment, striations kay no, authorhythmic kay yes, control kay involuntary, same as cardiac muscle, function niya kay compressed organs, ducts, tube, and so on. Next. Now we have the four muscle major function of characteristic. We have contractibility, excitability, extensibility, and elasticity. First, we have contractility. Next. Contractility. Contractility is ability of a skeletal muscle to shorten with force. When skeletal muscle contract, they cause movement of the structures to which they are attached. Contractibility is a example of kanang ni-move ka sa imong body parts. Kanang like nakigikuha ni istorya ka nag-move kag muscle ana sa imong baba and kanang nakigikuha na move imong muscle mo na mag-contract imong muscles imong mga skeletal ana na mo cause nag-movement. Next. Excitability. Excitability is ability to respond to stimuli. So what is stimuli? Stimuli can trigger a physical or behavioral change. Now we have go to Luis, the next reporter.
Hello.
Dong, gradong.
Hello, text ni.
Makita ko now.
Gapo kayo.
Tam isa bataa.
O kung wala yung makita sa ko.
Ginang, kita ra. Kusog rin mong tingog.
Emong nang daw makita na daw. Muna kag cause Ginoo.
Hanap kay Patanaw daw ko tanaw daw ko mga slide na ko.
Dara.
Basin
Kita ra.
mga slide na ko ba? Maura na. Gay. Inag start na.
Start.
Extensibility. Balik. Balik daw.
Snort.
extensibility. Oh, ibalik ka daw. Nag-start na.
Ginadong.
Extensibility. Excitability is ability of a muscle be stretched without tearing. Ang kaning extensibility kay kuan siya muscle nga ma-stretch nga dili na kanang di siya maputol. More siya excitability. Elasticity. Elasticity is ability to return to normal shape. Ang elasticity kay muscle siya nga kung mo stretch siya kay mura siya mobalik siya sa normal shape. Mura siya kanang murag rubber inana siya. Mura siya elasticity. Cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle cells are connected to one another by intercalated discs. Intercalated discs are specialized structures that include tight junctions and gap junctions that are facilitate action, potential conduction between the cell. Smooth muscle. Smooth muscle cells are small and spindle-shaped, usually with one nucleus per cell. Table 7.2. They contain less action and myosin than do skeletal muscle cells. Smooth muscle cells are organized to form layers. Muscular animal and plants growth. Learning objectives. Distinguish essential, beneficial, macro, and macronutrient requirements for plants and animals. Predict the symptoms of nutrients deficiencies in plants and animals. The need to move for various life activities. The muscles of small animals allows them to move. Animals such as the jellyfish lack no true muscles but can still move due to their two layers of contractile fibers. Animals with exoskeleton, such as ants, lends them remarkable strength for their size. Have you ever seen tiny ants carrying loads of food many times heavier than their weight, or dragging along the corpse of huge insect? Their strength is largely due to the mechanical advantages found in the arrangement of their muscles attached inside their exoskeleton.
Ano sigla nga siya kanisan? Ikaw sabi hapit dali ra lagi ni.
Dali ra ni.
Sangay.
Oh,
Imo pa na.
ako pa rin. Nagkuan?
continuation na si imuha.
Muna mo gaingon
Oh.
sa chat ganina ro.
Oh, continuation na siya.
Aw.
Bunal sa ngay, bunal go.
Nag-record at gipaningot ko eh.
Ilang hot na kay ko?
Inagaw ha.
Go.
Because of some complex biochemical principles, an insect the size of human would have a greatly diminished relative strength. The insect muscle skeleton arrangement is also responsible for the mosquito's rapid wing movement. Scientists were puzzled with how mosquito and other insects could move their wings so fast that the nerves that active the flight muscles could not fire so rapidly.
Mute na sa ngay, ako na. Turn off the camera, man, nigga. What's up, Kathleen? Ay, nadong. Plant growth and support. Next slide. What is open growth? Plants have a growth pattern called open growth. A plant adds new organs such as branches, leaves, and roots, which enlarge from the tips of the root and shoot throughout life. This form of growth wherein new cells are always being added to the plant's body by activity of meristem. Next slide, please. Meristems are located at the tips of stem and branches root tips to join where leaves attach to the stem. So meristem, a formative plant tissue usually made up of small cells capable of dividing indefinitely and giving rise to similar cells or to cells that differentiate to produce the differentiative tissues and organs. Next slide, please. Meristematic tissues are type of tissues found in meristems. Meristematic tissues function is to heal the wounds of an injured plant. New cells produced in meristems through mitosis eventually differentiate or change into other plant tissues such as vascular system. Vascular system runs through the ground tissue inside a plant. And the function of vascular tissue transports water, minerals, and sugar to differentiate parts of the plant. Ground tissues makes up most of the interior of a plant. It carries out basic metabolic functions and stores food and water. Dermal tissues cover and protect the plants and control the gas exchange and water absorption in roots. Meristems give rise not only to vegetative parts of the plants, such as new leaves and stem, but also the cells that produce reproductive parts. Next slide. They have two growth patterns happen in lateral. These two types of growth are brought about two types of meristems. The primary growth will be discussed in the next slide and the secondary growth. Next slide, please. What is primary growth? Primary growth is the apical and the lateral, and the elongation of the stem and roots. So primary growth is a result of rapidly dividing cells in the apical meristems at the shoot tip of the root tip. Next slide, please. What is secondary growth? Secondary growth is the apical meristems, whereas the thickening of the stem. So, to add more information, girth of the plant is the thickness or width of the stem is called the girth of the stem. Thank you. Rex, your turn.
Lah, lain na. Lang ah.
Rex, mulib na ko kay magamit ang kuya PC.
Okay ra.
Gigi.
Ulibsad ko. Lubat na ko.
Yo,
Ayo sangay ikaw ang moon of
mag-start
the
na
sun.
ko ha. Ay sabadong. Apical meristems increase in length. All plants exhibit primary growth. It starts as soon as seeds germinate from the ground. Primary growth makes plant grow taller toward the light and their roots to push and grow deeper into the soil ward water. At the tips of plants, there are specific growth zones called apical meristems. They are in charge of the main body of the plant as well as the extension of the shoots and roots. Next slide. Most herbaceous plants with green and flexible stems have only primary growth. Ay, balik. Kani nga slide, balik. Kato nga slide. Nasa ubasa. Most herbaceous plants or non-woody plants with green and flexible stems have only primary growth. There is no secondary growth in herbaceous plants because they lack the cambium layer or the growing part of the trunk of their vascular tissue. The lack of cambium layer is also why the stems or herbaceous plants are softer rather than wood and die back every winter. Primary xylem and primary phloem are the xylem and phloem produced by apical meristems. Primary xylem is found in the young and growing parts of plants. They can be found in roots, stems, and leaves. Primary phloem is a kind of phloem that vascular plant's main meristem produces. Primary phloem is a phloem that comes from the procambium during primary growth. Every organ contains primary phloem. Only the stem and roots are perennial, dicots, and gymnosperms contain secondary phloem. Next slide. Lateral meristems increase in diameter. This increase in diameter is a result of cell division in the second type of meristem, the lateral meristem. Unlike apical meristems that are found at the tips, roots, and stems, lateral meristems are located within and parallel to the sides of the roots and stems. So the lateral meristems kay makita siya sa roots and stems. They are in charge of secondary growth, which is the rise in stem thickness and birth. In wounded tissues, meristems regenerate from other cells and are in charge of repairing wounds. Next slide. The lateral meristem has two main types that give rise to secondary growth: the vascular cambium and the cork cambium. Next slide. Vascular cambium is a type of lateral meristem that produces secondary phloem and secondary xylem, commonly known as wood. The vascular cambium is the main growth tissue in the stems and roots of many plants, specifically in dicots such as buttercups and oak trees, gymnosperms such as pine trees, as well as in certain other vascular plants. Cork cambium, the tissue seen in several vascular plants as a portion of the epidermis, found between the cork and the primary phloem. It is one of the several layers of the bark. Cork cambium is the lateral meristem that is accountable for secondary growth, substituting the epidermis in the roots and stems. Cork cambium is a plant tissue that is part of a plant's outer covering or periderm. The cork cambium definition state that It is the single cell layer of cells that produces cork and phylloderm cells. It is found in the stems and trunks of woody plants such as angiosperms and gymnosperms. The periderm consists of three concentric circular layers from the outside in. These layers are cork. Cork, also known as phloem, are the air-filled spongy cells that appear as exterior bark. Cork cells are dead when they fully mature. Cork cambium, also known as bark cambium or phyllogen. And lastly, phylloderm. The cells derived from the interior surface of the cork cambium cell layer. Thank you.